what in your opinion you would tell somebody who's starting up कि भाई साहब ऐसे रखना शुरू से so that you keep things intact? What would be top 3 points?
I'd say one thing, and top 3 points with only in the context of corporate governance or general
Yeah,
startup.
corporate governance, and where you can allow other people to invest in you without thinking too much. If your books are clean, if your
Yeah,
systems are correct, if your governance is right, you it's easy to get the capital. It's easy to get more partners and even
yeah.
people who join you.
One thing is that you got to be very clear about what are the regulatory frameworks in which you're operating.
Hmm.
And sometimes it is not so much that you are trying to be too smart or
Hmm.
mislead anyone. A
Huh.
lot of people do not actually genuinely know what are the regulatory frameworks that you're working under. People
Yes.
in passion or in excitement start a company,
Hmm.
but the regulatory framework for that industry they haven't completely familiarized themselves with. So read up properly on what is the regulatory framework around yours, because in India we are not Singapore or America where regulation is minimum. There is a
Hmm.
lot of regulation in a lot of industries, and in
Yes.
some industries it is way more than you can imagine. So be clear about that.
Yeah.
Second,
Find out what's relevant to your industry. Go to the guys who know it. Then only and then
yeah.
take your first step. Maybe you just taken something without knowing, may cost you a lot of heartburn later on.
Secondly, definitely read, what different shareholders agreements look like. What are the kind of clauses that are there? What are industry standards? Again, while there are the term industry standards thrown around, there is no one fixed standard. Like there is general trends of how, people reach board seats are decided, gets to a board seat, who doesn't, what are reserved matters. But you should be, because a lot of very talented people, and this happens a lot in journalism, Sumit. They're very good journalists, but they don't understand the business side of things. And
Yes.
they end up, messing up, not because their product was bad or because they were not good at what they did. They didn't understand paperwork is also a huge headache, yeah? And you can't just ignore it. कि हो जाएगा, मैं अब काम करूँगा. नहीं.
No.
4 years later पता चलता है that you have got an agreement that someone or the other is unhappy with, and there are certain clauses that allow exits which you didn't want or
Hmm.
allow you to be superseded. So there's so
Ah.
many things that one has to be aware of. So be very, speak to a good chartered accountant, speak to a good lawyer to understand how your company should be structured, what the rules
Yeah.
are, what the agreement says, what your rights are, etc.
Hmm.
And the third thing that I'll say, keep in mind is be very, and I don't mean the data कि भाई कितना बिक रहा है कितना नहीं बिक रहा कौन न्यूज़ खरीद रहा है कौन नहीं खरीद. Be very aware of the space you're in, and it should be a second nature to you to. And if that is not your habit, start consuming that. For example, if you want to start getting into publishing, start reading a lot of books. If you want to get into cold drinks, start drinking a lot of cold drink. I have seen in my years, even when I used to, be in production, I worked on a few movies also. A lot of people wanted to make films, but if you ask them by which are the top 10 films, their
Ah.
filmmaking experience was so limited.
Hmm.
अब आप अनुराग कश्यप को देख लो, when you read about his story, he had seen every film, yeah, from the
Ah.
Mughal Azams to the Chachi 420 or whatever it is, like everything he'd seen.
अनुराग ने कैमरा एंगल स्टडी किए हैं. And
Or you
yeah,
see,
I can talk. Yeah,
you read
but
about Quentin Tarantino, so you should really know the space.